obviously join the room. I would love to hear from everyone who's attending. What are your roles? So if you could just comment in the chat, are you an SDR, are you an AE, are you leading a sales team? We would like to obviously personalize this discussion as much as possible and give you some value. So knowing who are we speaking with, it would be great. And who are we targeting? So just let us know, guys, if you can hear us, and let us know your role in the chat, where you're calling from. Brilliant. Okay, so I guess we'll get started. It's already 3 minutes past. So just wanted to focus on the topic of this discussion. Obviously, we're going to discuss the festive funnel and successful strategies for holiday prospecting. Just kind of a quick agenda and some housekeeping. This webinar will take about 60 minutes. We'll try to answer some of the main topics within 45 minutes, and then any questions you have, please post them in the chat, and we'll focus on those questions the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Okay. I'll just make maybe a quick introduction to the guys that we have on the panel. Let me start with Will. Will is the co-founder of Lavender, also known as the email guy. Lavender is a tool that helps sales teams write better emails. He has also been recognized as one of the top sales voices on LinkedIn and hosts a show called Ask or Read. So if you're not following him yet, do yourself a favor and do it now. You're in for a real treat. Say hi, Will.
Hey, appreciate the intro, Phil. So I talk a lot about prospecting, particularly from the vantage point of over half, almost 1 billion emails that we've processed here at Lavender. So a lot of data points that I can bring to the discussion. But the other piece to it is just I'm also on the receiving end of a lot of these sales emails. So I can bring a bit of the buyer's perspective to add some context to excited.
Chris, we can hear a little bit of a background noise on your side, I think. Okay, thank you so much, Will. Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into the data for sure. Based on all the data that you guys have. But let me just quickly introduce Sam. Sam is the partner manager at Reachdesk. He likes to talk about ABM strategies, and he likes to spread the word around sales and marketing professionals, and how he really speaks about how to cut through the noise and how to measure direct mail at scale. So Sam, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Yeah, hi everyone. And yeah, obviously sort of we're very much in the season of gifting now, but we talk about this sort of all year. I've been talking about Christmas since about June and Christmas campaigns, but then actually how can you really use that physical element to really cut through and put something physical and tangible in people's hands that sends a message. That digital channels are fantastic, but when you combine the physical element with the digital element, that's when this becomes really powerful. And sort of I've been a BDR, I've sort of worked in the inbound side, and now working with partners as well. There are a number of different plays that you can be using to really capture people's imagination and make sure that your conversion rates when you're outreaching to people go through the roof. So looking forward to speaking today.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I'm also, looking forward to actually kind of learning from you guys. I told my team and, pretty much everyone at Dealphone to log into this webinar, obviously. And I'm looking forward to learn some of the strategies you guys have in play for today. So awesome. Last but not least, we have Chris with us. So Chris is a sales evangelist and a video content creator on LinkedIn and on TikTok. So if you don't follow Chris, check him out. I've been watching some of his contents and videos the last few days. Great insight, and he's an awesome, funny guy. Also a husband, has 2 kids, and if I am not mistaken, loves to drink tea, just like myself. Is that correct, Chris? Cheers.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, Chris Van Prague, long-time video prospecting evangelist, big advocate of video, both as a user and a seller. Like to help people to create better videos, whether that be just those kind of standard prospecting ones, or kind of getting creative with your outreach to try and get in front of your prospects. So yeah, really excited to have this chat. Yeah, absolutely, huge fan of a cup of tea. We'll always have one to hand. Great to be part of this, and yeah, looking forward to it. Hopefully the audio is better as well. I switched my headset, so hopefully that's better.
Yeah, absolutely. We just could hear when you were moving things on your desk a little bit, but now it's audio is totally fine. So thank you so much. Brilliant. Yeah. So let's get this going. And for the people who didn't hear me in the beginning, I just wanted to let you know that we'll talk for about 45 minutes, and the last 15 minutes will be focused for your questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll focus on them at the end of the webinar. But yeah, let's get this started. So I was, funnily enough, on your LinkedIn profile Will yesterday, and I saw some of the comments that a few of your followers were putting in the chat. You were asking about some of the things that they wanted to discuss, or some of the topics. So I have a few questions here that I would love. The first one is about personalization. You mentioned that personalization is always in season, but how personalization, like how much personalization do you actually do, and would you be able to kind of give some examples around that? I'm really thinking, for my team, because we do focus on a lot of inbound opportunities, and we have a lot of volume. So I'm talking about kind of personalization at scale. Would you have any tips on how to personalize? Is it in season? And also, is it relevant to do it at scale, or would you kind of do it on a one-to-one basis rather than at scale?
Yeah, I think the whole notion of at scale, what people are actually talking about is segmentation of their lists, which they should have been doing regardless. So, when we talk about at scale, what we're really talking about is just we're reaching out to a group of people that have similar challenges, issues. They fall into similar buckets of common traits that we can use when we're doing our outreach to make it more relevant. Where I see so many people go wrong with personalization is they treat it like a checkbox, as opposed to thinking about it as a process, as I'm going to reach out and have a thoughtful conversation with this person on the other end. So the data on this, by the way, is
That was my next question. So awesome.
You're asking how much should you personalize, and SalesLoft did some great research on this a few years back. What they found was there's this like 20% to 80% window where you find the most efficacy. And so you start to get into this world of like, okay, yes, 80% is more effective than 20%, but how do I like manage my time appropriately? The reality of it is most people write a personalized email. It takes them like 15 or so minutes, right? Obviously, we build tools to make that faster, but the point is, it's like if you're thinking about it and like you're approaching it in this like very one-off mindset, you're never going to have a good time. It's never going to work for you. And it can work for you. In fact, it's working better than it's ever worked before. So personalized messaging, if we were having this conversation last year, I'd be telling you it was 100% more effective. You're going to get 2 times the amount of replies. That number is now 13 times more replies, 1,200% more
Wow.
responses. And so you think about it, like you just immediately, as soon as you know something isn't actually written for you, you just block it out, mental white noise, right? Where it hits that
Right.
mental spam filter and you just hit delete and you move on. So how personalized that communication should be. It should be not necessarily with the thought process of like, am I checking a box? It should be with the thought process of, does this person recognize that I've done my homework? I have a valid reason for showing up in their inbox, and I understand the ins and outs of what's going on, at least from an external perspective. I'll never be perfect, which if you want, I can talk to like tonality, but like I'll never be perfect in my outreach. So the the personalization piece, right? It's just you're looking for what are the external indicators that tell you that this person on the other end is having a challenge that you can potentially help them with. So yeah, it might be that I do a post about our team struggling to get into struggling to get meetings, or we have this struggle with getting multiple stakeholders to see a demo. Well, Chris might see that and be like, oh, you're struggling to get multiple stakeholders to watch a demo. One of the things that I've done in the past is coach teams on how to use video to multi-thread. And would you want to sit down and talk through how I've done that before? And like, that's a really short, very personalized note that wouldn't take that much time to put together. But
Absolutely.
the idea of in season is a little tongue in cheek, but the reality of it is like holidays just mean there's more background noise for the person that you're trying to email. There's the planning that they've got to do for work for the next year ahead. There's also the life that's going on around them, right? We got kids, we've got families, we're traveling sometimes, and so like recognizing those like human factors, if you're not putting that extra level of effort, you're not going to get the extra level of results out.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I hope this is giving some encouragement to everyone listening to make sure you personalize your outreach. I think it also helps giving your buyers a better experience, right? So we have to also remember that we're speaking to a human at the end of the line, and we have to also make sure that we give them the best sales experience possible. So personalization definitely helps there. But Sam, you were gonna add something there.
Yeah, I think sometimes we talk about personalization all the time, and it's almost just reframing that question. You say, well, mentioning like, oh, it's the tick box, and it's saying it's not, is this personalized? It's just, is this relevant? Like, that's all we're really trying to. If you're reaching out with something that's going to be relevant to that individual, then, and we'll probably touch on like the quality quantity thing as well later, but relevancy is the most important piece here. If something's relevant, then by definition it's personalized to a point. Maybe that's then the 80-20 split, and you can start to really personalize to the next level, maybe with video, or taking into account other really specific pieces within that account or that individual through your research that you found out. But if you can sit there and go, okay, this is going to be relevant because I know that they're using a particular tool when you've got that tool that solves this challenge, or I've seen them at lots of events, and therefore I know that they're sort of doing a lot of brand awareness or meeting bookings. If you can tick that box when you're sort of reading through a piece of outreach, then I think you're definitely sort of at least a good chunk of the way there towards that personalization point. It's sort of just reframing it slightly.
Absolutely, and I guess video prospecting falls into that, right? Falls into that bracket. What would you say, Chris, and what would you add to this in terms of using personalization and using kind of video to set yourself apart?
Yeah, so I'll come to that. Just one thing a point I wanted to make was, I think attempted personalization can also completely ruin your attempts to have a conversation, because and I don't want to put words into Will's mouth, but Will talks a lot about that opening line on email, right? That you can see. So if you see that first line of hey, I noticed that we both work in sales, is a terrible way to start a conversation, and it's immediate opportunity. That email is gonna get deleted because my first line is I want it to be personal. So you can also go the opposite way when you kind of think, I'm going to write an email, I'm going to make it personal. I can't think of anything, so I'm just going to say, hey, we both work in sales, or like, I noticed that you're based here. It's awful. So you can also completely ruin your attempts if your attempt at personalization is a tick box exercise. I think going to your question about video, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's inherently personal, assuming that you're making a video on a one-to-one basis rather than creating a video that you're going to send to everybody, and that's a whole separate thread. So I think a video is inherently personal. There is things that you can do to show that you've made it for them, whether you be sat on, the video is the thumbnail as you on their LinkedIn profile, or you're on their website, you're on something that's going to be able to help you to stand out. But I think you still, in the email, you're not going to just send a video without the copy. So I think that personalization piece ties exactly into what Will was saying. Really, you need to lead them in as a reason to watch the video. But if you're going to send video, you need the body of the text to direct them to click on the video. Don't do in the text what you're trying to do in the video. There's just no point. So use the body of the text. Say, hey, I noticed that you recently posted about this. I've made a quick video explaining how we help solve for that. Worth a look. Something really nice and short that encourages them to do that. So it's still the same thing. Video is inherently personal. It will take more time to do. So it depends on where the viewers are going to lean on how much time they have to be able to create unique personalized videos against uniquely personalized emails. But yeah, it's inherently personal in just the content you're going to create.
Just on that note, Chris, you say you think it will take longer, and it sort of inherently is longer. But then Will's saying, actually, if you sit down to write that sort of first personal email, you can spend 10, 15 minutes. Actually, it's something I sort of found. It took me a little while to get to that point, but once you get confident, record and send, actually you can start to make things more personal more quickly, potentially than even sort of writing that first personal email, because you video yourself, you say it, you're confident in what you filmed, and then away it goes. And actually it can be a great way to amplify that personalization quickly.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things you're hitting on is it takes practice, right? Like, you're not going to just like come out of the gate and be able to rip out 20 to 30 personalized emails per day and like your first go. It's going to take a little bit of practice, a little bit of understanding like the nuance in and out. But once you get the hang of it, once you kind of understand, okay, when these following things are present, that means I'm going to write about the following subjects. You start to get really quick with what you do. What you don't necessarily realize you're doing is you're actually just putting the information into these little building blocks inside your brain. You're building frameworks of like, okay, I know I'm going to finish up with an ask. I know I'm going to start with some kind of like observation to get the opening going. Yeah, there's a question in the chat around like, what are good opening lines? The best opening lines aren't necessarily an opening line. It's just like helpful context to things. The best opening lines are really about introducing context, right? Because like, it's Q4. One of the best things we could be doing right now is like re-engaging old prospects. It's a great time of year to go to the old graveyard and re-engage some folks where it didn't quite work out. And that opening line, that personalization, isn't going to be, hey, I saw you're in sales, right? You have prior experience with them, which is just as good as like, hey, I see you're hiring, or hey, it looks like you might be focused on expanding out into a new market with this new product launch. These little bits and pieces, it's no different than, hey, last time we talked, the following was really important. I see X. Is that still a priority? Super short, super simple way to write a message, which all of that same frameworking of how you're introducing a conversation, it works in video too. What we're talking about is like, context, the problem that the context makes you believe is true, followed by, an optional of whether or not you want to introduce your solution just yet, but really just try to open it up for dialogue.
Yeah, sorry, Sam. Go ahead.
Please, Chris.
I'm just going to say that I think there's the two things, because it was when we talk about video, we talk about personalization here, and I think there's personal and there's personalization. So video is very good at personal, like video, because Will mentioned it already about tonality. Very hard to do tonality well over email. You end up thinking about it a lot more than you do when you're just conveying yourself on a video. So tonality, personality, and being personal is very, very easy to do on video, assuming that you're coming at it from a place of positivity, rather than like, oh, I've been told I've got to make videos, so here's me just delivering my pitch over video. So I think personalization gets you the click, and then personality gets you the watch, but that personalization still always absolutely has to relate to the buyer and their problem, and not just a case, hey, I'm sending a video, so I know it's going to be personal, so I can spend the first 20 seconds saying, hey, it's Chris, and I do this, and this is how I help, and these are all the great things about me, because that video isn't going to serve the purpose. So I think it's just important just to consider the differences between personalization and being personal.
Chris, I have a question for you on the thumbnail. So you have that personalization and the little like pre-message. The thumbnail. Do you find that personalizing that thumbnail using like almost like a screen share backdrop of like, here's the thing that I'm looking at that got me excited to reach out, like, do you find that works well?
Yeah, I think the mistake lots of people often make is they, depending on which tool you're using, you'll have the little bubble in the corner. So you're really small right down there in the corner. So all people see is just a thumbnail of maybe their website. Maybe it's small though, right? And if you're viewing it on your mobile, it's going to be really, really small. So I think you do have to consider what that's going to look like. The play button will often be in the middle. So if their face is in the middle, so there is things that you need to consider. But I think if you can do the thumbnail right, for me, when it comes to that personalization, you need them to know that you've made the video for them. It's a terrible analogy, but often the way I've explained it is like, you know, in those movies where someone gets kidnapped and they show that they're still around because they hold them in front of that day's paper. Like, there's a terrible analogy, but like, there's a way of being able to show you've made that video for them. And I think if you don't do that well, it's just a thumbnail, and then potentially the triggers of like, oh, I've just been sent some spammy link to some piece of content or something that's useless to me. So I think you're going through the effort of making a video. Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that thumbnail is something that stands out. You want to be smiling and positive. It's going to stand out in their inbox. So make the effort to just, give it a big wave, be on their website, be on their LinkedIn profile. I've seen people do some really clever things. You can even upload, obviously, your own thumbnails, but that, again, adds a little bit of extra time. But yeah, absolutely, it definitely will help and starts more of a conversation because they can see that video has been made for them, for sure.
Yeah, the thing that's been most effective on me, so this is very subjective, is actually on LinkedIn, using the native recording feature on your phone and just like being on phone and recording like in line on like a LinkedIn message, because I've just like, there's zero friction. I can watch it right within LinkedIn, and like, I don't know, there's something about, I don't know, it's almost like we've all been like TikTokified, where as soon as I see somebody like in like this very obviously real format, feels very authentic, like right out of the gate.
I feel as though LinkedIn actually, it's just, by definition, it is a far more personal channel to be going down. So that difference between that personalized and personal, as you say, Chris, but yeah, it's quick, it's easy. Yeah, you can either send that video, or you can, I feel like just the messages you're sending in general are more chatty. It's even like this time of year, we talk about like closed lost accounts and things like that. I'll send people a mince pie. It's just like, you can kind of have more fun with it and just be a bit more chatty, which is going to get that engagement up, which makes people realize you're human, which I think is harder to do over email for sure.
There's something that Tyler Washington, who folks should follow, he's a big proponent of video prospecting, and he talks a lot about the permission slap, particularly when messaging on LinkedIn. And I think that's a really good thing. Those who aren't using video on LinkedIn, if you haven't, it's only on the mobile app. So that might be something that people now are going to LinkedIn to say, I'm going to record a video and don't see it. It's because it's only in the mobile app. So there is something, to your point, Will, like it almost feels quite dark social, because you're using a tool which very few people are going to be using. There's not a lot of kind of plugins or ways of being able to show that, to make that scalable, other than just shooting a quick video. So I think something that Tyler talks about is that permission slap. I'm going to message someone saying, hey, notice this, I'm going to make you a quick video, is that okay? And then sending it. Obviously you can just send the video straight off, but sometimes they just pop up and you're like, what the hell is this? I don't know what I'm going to play. But
oh yeah, well, one of the things you're pointing out, Chris, is the way that LinkedIn displays information, right? Like if you put a link, the preview of said link is going to eat up the entire screen space. And so like one of the things that I always tell people is, when thinking about like, we're talking about personalization, we're talking about using video, like send the link and then send the message, because like it's two different messages. because otherwise what'll end up happening is your message gets like shoved above, and then they don't ever see the actual like writing. The other piece of that though is you think about personalizing like an email. The first thing they're going to see is the top of the message. Now, if you're personalizing a LinkedIn DM, they might see the top of the message from a mobile notification, but when they pull it up on their desktop, they're only going to see the bottom. Like, so it creates this weird like approach of like, do I really lean into like we've got data on like if it's a personalized message and you use a PS, it's going to be 35%. It's like around 35% more effective. I think it's like 34 point something like that. But think about like adding that PS layer or like weaving in a nod back to the original observation in that LinkedIn DM format, just because it can get sort of shoved above viewpoint and all they see is the bottom. And so if all they see is like, hey, would that be worth a conversation to learn more about how great we are? They'll be like, I don't need to read that.
I guess to touch on your point about the data point, I was just thinking, are there any kind of trends that you foresee in the future of prospecting, and kind of how can sales, our sales team, also sales organization in general, stay ahead of the curve? I'm looking into going into Q1. Do you see any trends based on the data that you're seeing at Lavender or at Reachdesk or potentially at Video in the past, Chris?
I think video is still vastly underused. I see and speak to lots of decision makers, and they're telling me that they're still receiving obviously tons and tons of emails and a very, very small handful of videos. And we'll be interested to hear if that's the same situation for Will. I think sales reps are still very comfortable, probably more comfortable with sending video as part of like the later stages of their sales cycle, but still uncomfortable doing it with prospecting. So I don't know that it's me being looking into my crystal ball, but I personally still see it as being a really, really huge opportunity for reps to be taken advantage of, because it's still being used by a very small percentage of reps.
Yeah, I was gonna say the things that have inherent friction to do and do well, they'll never go out of style because people just don't like to do work. That's all I've learned. As soon as it's like, oh, I have to like record a 1-to-1 video, it's like they're like, oh, that's a lot of I don't know. Versus like somebody comes in and they like catch them. I refer to it as the efficiency trap, right? Where it's like, look how many you can send. This is amazing, and people get like really wide-eyed and they don't realize the person on the other end absolutely hates receiving exactly what it is. So that's a trend I don't see going away. That's just human nature. The like some interesting prospecting trends that come to my mind are one, account based, moving away from this idea of one to one, and it's more organization to organization, coordinating multiple people from within an account on your end to the account on their end. So like if our AE Sam is reaching out to, I'm looking over at his desk right now, so I'm like, yeah, one of our AE Sams is like, he's reaching out to particular person within the organization. Maybe I'm also reaching out to this other person within the organization while he's also reaching out to like 4 other people below, but also like adjacent to that person, right? So that's like a huge trend as far as how I've seen people start to approach this. The other interesting sort of trend I'm watching evolve is this AI written personalization that, it's back to that doe-eyed sales rep who's like real excited to just hit the easy button. It is not going to lead to good things. It might like introduce a quick pop of like, you get a few suckers within the your outbounding list, but as soon as people start to realize that there was no effort put behind it, they immediately start to tune out. And so I think there'll be inevitable patterns in how those emails are written, just from being on the front lines of seeing exactly how those things come out the door as well, where it'll be like checkbox, pitch, like some kind of CTA, right? And it'll be on repeat, and they'll typically be on the longer winded side of things. And so, like, seeing those things go out in mass volume is going to be one of those things that I think will come and it will go. Hopefully, it goes sooner than it comes. But my thought on that is just like recognize the things that you're putting off when hitting that easy button, which is like your own development as a sales rep, getting better and like becoming a thoughtful individual. And that is, if you think about good prospecting, it's a good discovery process. You're doing research, you're like thoughtfully articulating a value prop. Those are the things that are going to prepare you for either becoming an AE or managing the deal as an AE. Which that's the last trend that I wanted to hit on, which is the um, the um, the idea of AEs having to sort of brush the dust off and come back into prospecting. I'm seeing a lot of orgs shrink down the size of their SDR orgs. I'm seeing a lot of orgs pushing their AEs back into prospecting, and they haven't done it since the easy button days of I just need to crank the volume knob on my sales loft cadence and let it rip. That's not going to work. Um, and so it'll be an interesting sort of wake up call for folks being like, oh, I gotta like actually build my own pipeline, and I gotta do it thoughtfully. So I think there'll be some interesting trends. Last year I was trying to think through like trends that I would see as far as like different like uh, expectations on like the data of like how long an email is, how many questions. What I've found is I'm pretty bad at predicting those. The data does what it does. Usually it trends in the opposite direction of like where it is currently because people pattern match, people sort of start to see these things. So that's that's my thought on trends.
What about you, Sam? Anything you see on the direct mailing space?
Yeah, there's sort of probably two things there. I think one, we're seeing that the reps that are engaging with kind of our partners, particularly within the sort of the ABM space, are the ones that are really succeeding. And so whether you're a BDR or an AE now, and sort of looking into 2024, it's using those sort of external influences to get as much information as possible to help you, and those reps that are really sort of building relationships outside of not just Reachdesk, but within sort of other sales teams within the go-to-market space. In our instance, they're the ones that are doing really well because they can hit up that sort of wider network, and we've got ways now, sort of just from Salesforce, you can ping a message to Zoom Info or to maybe Lavender or wherever it may be, and just help each other. It's reps that are helping each other out are the ones that are doing really well, because they can get more intelligence. They can maybe get an intro in there. They'll maybe learn more about the sort of the macro conditions of an account that maybe you didn't see, because they're already a customer of that rep that they're reaching out to. And then we talk about personalization, you can really personalize then the messaging as well, and that's working well, and I think is only going to increase more and more in sort of 2024, particularly where like it's tougher than ever to have those good conversations. And so if you can get help to sort of start to lay the foundations and sow that seed from someone else that isn't sort of a representative of your organization about yourself, that's going to pay dividends. Another thing though is, and what always surprises me, we talk about prospecting a lot, and we always talk about email, cold calling, LinkedIn, etc. One of the most successful channels we find here at Reachdesk is it's events, but it's not actually like having a booth at events, but just people rocking up at events, and like we call it sharking. You go and shark the floor at an event. think about how many conversations you can be having in an afternoon. Like, how many cold calls are you going to have to make to speak with, I don't know, 30 odd potentially decision makers? Probably a fair few. You can do that in a morning, and just being in the same room as the people you want to be in. It's nothing new, but I'm always still shocked at how few reps do it, and it's something that we really drive at Reachdesk. It helps that sort of we're working in that direct mail space, and there's some really cool plays that can be done around that, and you can stand out. You're sending care packages out afterwards that land on people's doorsteps sort of a week after the event, and it's a prime opportunity to re-engage that conversation, but you've built that relationship up. And I think with events very much like back now, it's something that you're starting to see that the opportunity is there, particularly if you're based in London, New York, San Francisco. A lot of the time these are free events. You can just rock up. You turn up on the day and wander around for a morning and have a chat with people, and you're going to see more opportunity to do that. Yeah, I'm always surprised at how few reps are really maximizing that opportunity. And if nothing else, you're learning more about your industry as well, just by having those conversations with your prospects.
Awesome. How do you guys feel about event? I saw you smiling there, Will, when Sam was speaking about events and shocking. How do you guys feel about this strategy?
Yeah, I mostly was smiling because I like the name, a little sharking. That's good. But no, events are great, man. It's pretty similar to video in the sense that it's a great moment to let somebody really see you, and how you sort of like your personality, how you approach things, etc. So I think the events piece is big. Like we obviously make pretty decent investment in events here at Lavender, and so when I think about what comes of that, the the like the base time, you can't really there's no substitute for it. Now you still have to follow up, you still have to like do your work on top of that. You got to recognize that like with travel things sometimes slip. You got to multi-thread to be like, hey, I met Sam at the such and such event, right? He mentioned blah blah blah. Like, curious, are you focused on that too, right? It can't just be that can't be your one thread. You've got to find others, because a lot of times threads break. Yeah, a lot of times threads break even after the conversation starts. And I think events are an example of that too.
Yeah, I've often found with that though, they can provide a really good first touch point in terms of, often you won't know from an organization who's going to be there, but you've seen that somebody is sponsoring it, and I'll reach out to often the whole sort of buying committee potentially and be like, look, I see that you're going to be sponsoring this. Don't know if you're going to be there. If you are, I don't know, make sure you get there safely, grab an Uber voucher or whatever it may be. And it's a real low touch point, an easy thing to do, just to get people thinking about it. Now there's probably only one individual within that is actually going to be there, but then you can pinpoint it and they'll get the response, but also you've then at least had that kind of engagement already, so that then if you are following up because you've got then more intel that you've gathered from various other sources, it's a warmer connection, and it's a human thing to do. Oh, if you're going to be there, let's say hello, rather than reaching out and sort of pitch slapping from the offset.
Totally.
It's such an interesting thing, because there'll be a lot of reps that found themselves kind of into this career, and I hate to talk about COVID because it feels like we're long since away from that, but spent that part of their career where there was no events. So and I can speak for myself in that situation. So that being good at event, that feels like a whole topic in itself, like, because so many folks, their own playbooks, their own ways of generating pipeline when there was no events, and completely used to there not being any events. So now there are lots of events. Still, I imagine lots of aren't leaning in on that because it's just not been in the ether for so long. So I feel like that's a whole separate thing that needs to probably get tackled at some point, is maximizing on that. Because I can certainly speak from my own experience of like the first 2 years of, well, roughly the first 2 years of my career in SaaS, there were 0 events. So then suddenly having to be good at that and know what to do and the tactics to be able to be good at that and leverage events to the best effect is something that I think there's a lot of training that still needs to happen with that.
Okay. I guess driving kind of back the attention to holiday prospecting. I know that during holidays some prospect might be resistant to engaging with new companies or new salespeople. How do you navigate the resistance and ensure that your outreach remains effective? And I mean, we can talk about prospecting, but I'm happy also to talk about deals that are currently in your pipeline that you're trying to progress or potentially even close before the end of the year. I know that a lot of organizations are looking at postponing the decision to, for example, January. So we'd love to hear your insight around this.
I'm not 100% sure on this, because in my view, like it's yes, there's more likely to be downtime, absolutely, but it's not like everything just stops, right? And I think so I think that there should always be a focus on good prospecting, and perhaps that the emphasis on what good email or good quality video looks like, perhaps there's an extra incentive to lean on it, because maybe you've got less time and you need to be more effective. But I don't think it's different. The other thing I would say really is when it comes down to pushing out, that kind of comes down to your effectiveness of understanding what the challenge is, right? Like priorities do shift, but ultimately like need to be able to have defined like be at a point where if you in your deal, and we're not talking about prospecting here, but in a deal, the understanding the cost of inaction, understanding why it is that a deal could get pushed out. And if a deal is likely to get pushed out into January, February, you should probably know about that before the middle of December. So I think it's, so I think it's I think there's I think talking about the holiday season as being a time when people may be more reticent, I think almost creates that behavior of reps feeling like, oh, no one's going to be around and things. Like, if there are plenty of reps that will tell you it's perfectly easy to get hold of people during December. It's, I was closing deals on December the 31st. I'm sure many reps will be working hard on that period between Christmas and New Year, because it's end of quarter for some, or end of year, or however it might be. So it doesn't stop, and any good rep will know that it never stops. Yeah, maybe slightly different focus, and you might want to change some of your language around the holiday season, because you don't want to just completely ignore the fact that it's there. But I think it's up to reps to be effective in their discovery, to make sure that well, I don't think it's a thing.
I totally agree. I think reps do forget that there's 3 weeks or probably 3.5 weeks of productive work that still needs to happen in December. So yeah, great points, Chris, and I definitely agree.
I'd often almost say there's people in a strange way, particularly as you get closer and closer towards that Christmas period, I've often found actually almost have more time in some respects, because lots of internal meetings where people are starting to take holiday and things aren't happening. And so the people that are still working potentially might be able to get time in their calendar that in other months of the year you would struggle. And sort of actually, by being the one, as you say, there's that sort of sentiment that, oh, everyone's sort of clocked off now. Actually, if you are the rep that's still sort of going on, the chances of actually converting and having an engaging conversation, my experience have increased more than anything.
Yeah, I can tell you from the buyer side of the equation, I'm not clocking out this holiday. So yeah, that it's like sort of a misnomer. The thing that I think about when I think about like they're going to be hesitant to a new engagement, that's really in my mind a problem of messaging and how it's framed. So you think about how most emails are framed up, how most prospecting is framed up. It's like, hey, here's all the cool stuff I do. Does that sound interesting to you? The problem is you enter into this translation problem, which I was already talking earlier, like buyers' tolerance for extra stuff this time of year. They've got family, they've got work stuff, they've got planning, they're trying to move around, right? Like it goes down. And so when you try to make the prospect translate why the heck they should care from all this noise about what you do, it doesn't matter how great your product marketing team is, they're not going to do the translation exercise. And so the thing that I always point back to is that personalization being particularly in season, right? And focusing in on what is going on now within the organization that tells me that this challenge is something that they would be focused on. And it might not be something that you're going to get going in December, but you're at least going to like break through with something that looks very different than what they always get in order to start conversation. Now, it might not be relevant at the time, right? You might have totally missed, which that's okay too. But it's not because, of some idea that they don't work during the holidays. Yeah, and there's plenty of deals where like you have to look at the like mid deal cycle of like pushback on holidays as like, is it valid or is it like invalid? So like if somebody's looking at our software and they're like, well, I don't feel like I'm gonna get the best data points from running a trial during the holidays because the holidays are just kind of different than like when we're normally selling. That might be the case, right? It might not be the case. Like if they're selling to e-commerce shops, like totally might be the case, right? Like it might just be a really weird time for them to be doing prospecting, in which case I have to listen to that and I've got to work with that. But if they sell sales tech, right? Like that's a false flag because sellers are working through the holidays, right? Like I know my team and like I know plenty of other teams that are, as Chris said, like signing contracts on the 31st, right? And so I think you sort of have to look at it situation by situation.
Absolutely. Thank you for your insight, guys. We have about 10 minutes left, so I would love to capture a few questions from the chat and make this potentially a bit kind of a quick fire session. I would love to hear from some kind of success stories. Have you had any fun maybe success stories from past holiday prospecting experiences? Something quick you guys could share. Maybe not.
Yeah, sure. I think the wonders of direct mail is you can have a lot of fun with it. Like you're giving something physical into people's hands, and often I use when it's a multi-channel approach where it will start with a call initially. You hear that things are going on in the background. As soon as you hear sort of kids going bananas in the background, that's exactly what you're looking for. I want someone to pick up, not necessarily have an engaging conversation with them. I want to hear kids going crazy in the background, and that's then a prime opportunity. I've then sent out like cupcakes with Paw Patrol on and things like that. That's a great way to engage in a conversation, and if you can sort of get somebody's kids really happy around Christmas, then the chances of having then a really good conversation coming into the new year fantastic. And yeah, last year I think I sent out some Spider-Man cupcakes. There were Paw Patrol, like boxes of lollipops. I put a little elf hat on one Friday morning and I had a great time. And that's what those are some of the, probably not they're not campaigns as such, but it's being able to just use your initiative and be human. Being really, really human in that prospecting process is when I've seen real success. And it was off the back, there's a few sort of close-on deals where they've all started with a conversation with a kid crying in the background and dogs going berserk.
Great story.
Personally,
oh, go ahead, Chris.
Go. Well, you go.
My comment was more like off topic in the sense that, like, Sam, I feel like one of y'all's prospecting like emails this time of year has got to be around like just pain of like getting those sending campaigns out the door, being like,
For sure.
oh
It's
man,
it's often actually, and it's that like multi-threading. If you
Yeah.
this time of year, it's speaking with sort of marketing execs, sort of even like office managers and people like that that often will have leadership's ear, but they're often the ones that are really feeling that pain. And it goes without saying, multi-threading is crucial, but it's a prime time to just understand that people are busy and do something nice as well. And we can talk about the pain that they're having, send them a little something to share that we understand that pain. And anyone in any industry can do that. It's just a token of goodwill to say, look, I understand that this is the pain you're having. And particularly when you're sort of dealing with maybe the people that are doing the grunt work and really dealing with some of the pain, they really appreciate it, maybe more so than even some of the decision makers. And it's a great way to get that chatter sort of started within an account. But yeah, like you say, Will, this time of year, Christmas gifting, we get far too many rather stressed out inbounds, typically sort of around this sort of week, going, hang on, I've got to send out 1,000 packages and they need to arrive before Christmas. And yeah, that's then like, okay, this is this is tough.
But Sam, it goes to show like personalization isn't always like, something on their LinkedIn profile. It can just be like the reality of the time of year. It's like I think about like the way of like, I'm looking at somebody's background on LinkedIn and I'm like, oh wow, you've done this for a few years. I imagine, I would say it's like wealth management. Like I imagine every year you're trying to get stuff out the door to all of those clients. That's
But
totally on point, like who that person is.
in any industry, if you're selling to accountants and you know that busy season comes around at the end of every March, you can resonate there and just show that you understand them and their industry, and you're not just some sales guy. Actually, you're someone that is an expert in the field, for sure.
Awesome.
My only ad was going to be just, I think, if you are outreaching to somebody who you feel very confident is likely to celebrate Christmas and the holidays, let's remember not everybody does, but if they do, there is a wealth of themes and content and ideas that you can lean in on. Certain gifts become particularly relevant. The guy with the board, I've made gifts in the past with the guy with the board in Love Actually, but I just edit the text to say like, please stop ignoring my emails. I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but that kind of thing. There's a whole wealth of stuff there. Making videos, I've put a Christmas hat on, and it goes back to that thing we were making earlier about like, how do you show that video has been made for them and it's personalized? Like you can do that and lean in on that a little bit. So I think it's fun to, add a bit of extra fun, acknowledge that it's a busy time of year, but try and brighten up, make sure that your email is the most interesting email that they're likely to receive that day. So I think just lean in on it, but just be conscious that not everybody celebrates Christmas and the holidays.
Absolutely. This is a question that I got from one of your followers, Will, on your LinkedIn yesterday. They were asking about how to leverage out of office messages. If you had any cool tips or tricks around that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces there. I mean, you think about out of office messages. Like, one, is there anything interesting in there that you can pull in for the follow up for when they're back in office? Because it'll obviously be the date. Two, there's typically somebody that could be multi-threaded that they will reference in. But three, there's also a deliverability benefit to the out of office message, which is you're establishing connection with their email domain server, which is not a bad thing. So there's a few little aspects to that. The whether it's contact info or understanding when they're back, or like, hey, hope the holiday was great. Like, or like wherever they were, or like maybe they have like a funny one, right? You can point to those things in your follow-up, and it shows that you're an actual human, because most of the time people hit that out of office thing because they've been automating their emails, and then they don't ever send another email to them again. Like most people just don't follow up. It's the reality of it. And so like if you're actually just like, hey, saw in your like out of office that you've been in blah blah blah, like I bet it was amazing, right? Like that's not obviously like the best example, but it's going to be something that they aren't getting from the 999,000 emails that they've got to read through when they get back.
It's the fact as well that it sounds kind of obvious really, but it's so quick and easy to do. You respond to the email, that out of office email there and then, and schedule it. Like you've already, during that sort of quiet time, done a load of your prospecting for the sort of first few days of January already. It's going out the door so that you can actually be thinking about whole new account lists or sort of new prospects or whoever it may be.
That's true. Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of like scheduling the task to do later, mostly because there might be something new that pops up, like a new person comes on and gets hired, but you can always do that in like a follow-up to the follow-up, right? And just be like, hey, also just saw the LinkedIn post about such and such joining the team. Like that's so exciting. Like, did you have any thoughts on my last note? Right? Super simple, like, but still thoughtful bump.
Cool, guys. Thank you so much. I think it's time to wrap this up. We have about 60 seconds left. So yeah, I just wanted to take the time to thank everyone for attending. Thank our panelists also, Will, Chris, and Sam. I know it's a tricky time of the year, and we're trying to get everything done. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone who attended, and hope you got some value from this webinar. And yeah, thank you for deciding to spend 60 minutes of your day with us, upgrading your sales skills, and hope this will help you prospecting. So happy prospecting, and I don't know if it's too early to say Merry Christmas to everyone, but Merry Christmas to everyone, and thanks for attending.
Awesome.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, y'all.